A Sunday School series entitled Our Changing World, and you have been on this journey to this point of the different topics, and I think we've been well resourced in the different topics, and today will be no different. Today we want to touch on an important subject that we've talked about, and that's our Safe Sanctuaries policy, and working towards what does it mean to have healthy sexuality or responses towards that within our policies. Interestingly enough, MCC sends out a quarterly called Intersections, which is out in the hallway there, and some of you reference this. And this, the summer 2016 issue is on child protection. And the editor of this is actually here today. Where is he? Lynn. There he is, Lynn Longenecker. He's a good friend. He'll help me with the sermon. Lynn and Lori are here from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. He works as the education coordinator for MCC, and Lori and Lynn and family are good friends from Bolivia. So he compiled this, and if you have more questions or more want to dig in deeper a little bit to after what Jenny talks to us about, you sure can. And the first article is by Jeanette Harder, who is the sort of the Dove's Nest Safe Sanctuary guru in the Mennonite Church that helps resource us as well. This Friday actually, pastors of the Western District Conference and other leaders had a pastor's day apart, as well as South Central pastors joined us. And we were resourced by Melissa Hofstetter, who is a practicing psychologist in California. And she came and talked to us about how we as church leaders can protect children or anybody in abusive situations, but especially our children, as it's an important topic. The statistics, maybe we'll hear some of the statistics. The statistics are no different in our churches, not that much different in our churches as they are out in the world. So how will we make sure that we protect each other from ourselves, maybe? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time again together, this time to have your Spirit enlighten, to push, to prod, to dialogue. And Lord, I pray that our hearts and our minds and our bodies be moved deeper into your holiness and into your care and into your goodness by this hour. Give Jenny the words to speak and us the ears to listen. Amen. Pastor Jenny.
Good morning. I didn't realize when Eileen and I talked about me doing this that I was going to have to follow Kevin Honeycutt. But I'll tell you what, if you promise to not expect to be as entertained, and I promise myself to not have to be as entertaining as Kevin, I think we'll make it through. One announcement that is totally unrelated to the topic, and that is that the HIB youth group offered, at the request of Western District Conference, refreshments at the mini music festival last night at the end of conference, and we overestimated the amount of fruit and cookies that we would need. So for donation, downstairs there are quite a few fruit cups and some amazing big monster cookies at a table. So if you would like to donate for HIB Youth, we're fundraising, we hope to go to Orlando next fall, or next summer, to the conference. So appreciate your help with that. Okay. They're singing over there. Sorry. Kids singing. Doesn't that just always kind of zap? All right. Safe Sanctuaries. I have to tell you, first of all, that I was really impressed that Buhler Mennonite has one, first of all, and secondly, that I was actually given one to sign when I was employed. Sometimes those pieces get dropped. but you've really been on top of that. Just a reminder about your Safe Sanctuary policy. Oh, it's upside down. Okay. Does it have to go over there? Brad? It fell asleep? Wake up! Oh, that won't help?
No.
Okay.
There you go. Try it now. What? There you go.
There we go. Okay, like that's really an important slide, but it helps me keep track of where I'm at. Just a few reminders about your policy. Adult volunteers need to be here a while before they work with children and youth. Try to observe the 2 adults per 1 kid, or if you can't manage that, at least 2 kids when you have one adult. But try to avoid one-on-one situations with children when you can. The education piece, which obviously is also happening, and if you have concerns about a child, to please let the Sunday school superintendent know, or Pastor Wilmer or myself. Your Safe Sanctuary policy, those of you that work with children have already signed. If you would just like to sign that as an adult in the congregation, BJ will have some copies of that here at the end of the Sunday school time, and you are encouraged to do that, just to acknowledge your awareness that this can be an issue. You may or may not know that at the delegate session at Mennonite Church USA in Kansas City last fall, we adopted a policy. And when I read this policy that passed almost unanimously, I thought, I wonder if people read this, because there's some powerful, powerful stuff in here. And just a few highlights. As congregations, we agree to develop and teach healthy, wholesome sexuality. And I'll talk more about that after a bit. We will make sure that child protection policies and procedures are in place and followed. We will teach members the reality of sexualized violence, especially by church leaders or other trusted individuals. We'll ensure that worship services and sermons are sensitive to needs of victims and survivors. And in that vein, if I touch on a chord for you today, or something really upsets you, or you find yourself wondering what's happening internally, or if you already know, if you are a survivor of sexual abuse and you need to step out, do what you need to do to take care of you. That is really important. We agreed to give attention to systems that create and sustain institutionalized violence. That includes the entertainment industry, and want to be careful that we are not condoning or excusing violence towards anyone, particularly not toward women and children. And a piece of this policy is to make sure that your pastors are practicing self-care, because that helps keep everyone in the congregation practicing self-care and being safe. You might wonder why I particularly am talking about this morning. I am the woman that talked to at the Pastor's Day apart on Friday that shared a bit of her story, referred to herself as a victim survivor, not willing to let go of one word or the other, because they're both important. But I am also a victim survivor of sexual abuse. I was molested as a child, and I believe that probably that experience, which happened over a period of time, greatly influenced my becoming involved in high school in a relationship that had a very serious power differentiation. I was a student, this person was a teacher, twice my age, and lived in that relationship for the 5 years of college that were very difficult and very challenging to walk out of. I was able to stuff all that to the side for a while, but when I became a mother, I was unable to ignore my pain and what was happening, and I was unwilling to try to raise a daughter without having dealt with whatever was happening internally within me. And so I spent many dollars and many years in therapy and healing. There are still things that I see and live with that will not ever go away. But, you know, God, let me see, what is that verse that I love? In all things, God works for good. And I hope that my story and my experience can help other people. One of the things that we do not deal with in our churches is teaching healthy sexuality. And it is time. It is past time for us to address this very, very difficult issue. It is hard to talk about. And so I thank you for the opportunity, and I thank you that you are willing to tackle this subject and to learn from other people's experiences. Someday I want to hear someone stand in front of the church and talk about their healthy sexuality and how they were raised as a child that helped them to have that and experience that, because we never hear from those folks. And I like to certainly think that there are some out there somewhere. The statistics say that 1 out of 5 Mennonite women, specifically surveyed in the Mennonite church, 1 out of 5 experienced some form of sexual abuse before the age of 18. And so when you look around at your friends and neighbors, 1 out of 5. So it is something that needs to be addressed. There is a curriculum. I don't know if you're using it or not. I failed to ask. Yes? Like annually? Oh, on Wednesdays. Okay. Called the Circle of Grace. It's part of that Dove's Nest education. It is really, really neat curriculum. Kids will learn at each grade level. Just some reminders about understanding that they're created by God, that they can describe and they can say what happens within their circle. They can decide. I mean, I know sometimes kids are sick or ill and they don't want you to touch their broken arm, and you have to. I get that. But that basically they get to determine their sense of safety and the boundaries around them to identify and maintain appropriate physical, emotional, spiritual, and sexual boundaries, and to identify boundary violation, and to demonstrate how to take action. So preschool, kindergarten, we're just talking about my body belongs to me, good touch, bad touch, trusting their gut if something doesn't feel quite right. It's okay. It's okay to tell an adult no. Again, you know, we're tiptoeing on scary ground sometimes when we talk about boundaries. But if kids are never allowed the permission to say, you know, I just don't feel like kissing Grandpa goodbye today, it's okay to let them do that. If they're told that they always have to do what an adult says, you are setting them up for danger. Kids, that doesn't mean you can say, no, I'm not going to clean my room or take out the trash. Okay? You got that? All right. By high school, the Circle of Grace curriculum is talking about date rape. I think, or hope at least, that there is focus also just on gender discrimination within our society and the inequality with which men and women are treated. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit in a little different ways. This verse, who said this? Who said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free"? What? You can say his name out loud. This is not Voldemort. Say it again. Who said this? Jesus. These are Jesus' words. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. These words may have saved my life. We are sometimes afraid to speak the truth. The truth for me meant acknowledging that someone had injured me and that it was not the fault of that little 7-year-old girl. That is probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, because as long as I could make it my fault, I had some power over it. I had some control. But when I had to say somebody else hurt me and I had nothing to do with that, it pulled the foundation out from under me, pulled the rug out from under me, and I kind of had to just restart building and figuring out who I was. Don't be afraid of the truth. When I was a school counselor, I had a child, a little boy, whose mom's boyfriend was taking some indecent liberties with him. And I ended up being subpoenaed. I was 8 months pregnant when I testified. That was just real interesting. And the lawyer was not nice to me at all, because I was the person that this child had talked to. And went to court once, ended up being a hung jury, I thought I was going to end up being subpoenaed. In fact, the court date was the day before my due date, the second court date. And I said, I'm just really not sure I can do this. They ended up settling out of court. The thing that bothered me the most about that whole deal was all the things that you see happened. The child is accused maybe of not being honest. The man is saying, what I did was misrepresented. And he did end up being guilty of a lesser charge than what the charge was. But what bothered me about the whole experience was that nobody was looking for the truth. Nobody was looking at what really had happened. The lawyer wanted to get the guy off. The mother wanted to get the guy in jail. I had my own personal feelings, as you can imagine, in that whole situation. But no one can heal if the truth is not named. It's not about getting the man out of jail. It's not about getting him in jail. The truth is vital and important in the healing of everyone. And one of the things that became part of my healing process over many years was acknowledging the sickness in our society that set the perpetrator up to abuse me, and the impact that I saw that it had on his life. What is the truth? And when we can name the truth, can we both heal? Is that our goal? Is that what we want? Is for people to heal? And if we want people to heal, then we have to say what's true. And I went on and on about that. This verse, who said this? I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Who said that? Jesus said that as well. And I think we look at that verse in Matthew and we say, well, there's no hope for me. You know? I mean, everything you're looking at on TV is inviting you to look with lust in your heart, right? Jesus did not mean that when that happens, you are a bad and evil person. I think sometimes we see this verse and say there's no hope, and we write it off, and we don't think about what did Jesus really mean by that. And I think what Jesus meant by this was not, you know, that automatic thought that might happen in your head, but what you choose to continue to think about. And when you look at other people simply as sexual objects, which we are trained to do, my friends, and our children are trained to do it every day. When we do that, Jesus said, we've committed adultery. It's not that initial look. It's that, do I only see you as a sexual object? And that's when we have a problem. That's when we are not being the healthy and whole people which God intended us to be. I couldn't talk about this today without talking a little bit about internet pornography. And I don't like to talk about internet pornography. But if you look at this, number of searches of pornography since the start of 2015, and you can watch the numbers roll. 1 out of 5 internet searches is for porn. Smartphones, large percentage of people have porn sitting there ready to look at, and it just pops up sometimes. It just pops up. Kevin talked with us last night. Last week, what he didn't mention is that there are some blocks available for your home. I had one of the pastors at the convention on Friday tell me that he has a accountability application where he and a friend send each other through this app on their phone what they search. And so that they are held accountable to each other. If one of them starts delving into territory that's not healthy for them to go, then the phone rings and they talk to each other. And I don't think it's happened. I think they just have it there just to keep themselves on guard. What we know about internet porn is that it has an impact physiologically on the brain, just like any addiction. When you're addicted to methamphetamines or alcohol, it physiologically changes how your brain functions. Porn does the same thing. It damages and it refines how your neurotransmitters connect so that you want more and more and more to see what you're seeing. Now, part of my issue with that is that we have, at least as far as I know, we do not have materials, we do not have books, we do not have any method by which our young people can explore their sexuality. All that's out there is porn. There really isn't anything else to satisfy a kid's curiosity about what the other gender looks like or about how this whole thing works. You know, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, it was like it didn't exist. There is no such thing. What are you talking about? And then you hit about 20 or 18 and everybody just expects you to know. Everybody expects you to know all about it. This is not good, folks. We have got to be the teachers about healthy sexuality and what it is. And it's frustrating to me as the mother of a 16-year-old boy that there really is not any healthy, safe material to show him to say, okay, this is what this is. And what we know about pornography is that 88% includes violence as a piece of what's happening. It includes typically males overpowering females or having the choice, the main choice or need in that situation. If you look at sexual things that happen on TV, many of those are tied with violence. They are not mutual. And this is going to sound really weird, but I'll just say, when I was going through this healing process, one of the things that I found was this resource list of books that you could read, like fiction books, where the material that had to do with sexuality was mutual. You know, there are like 4 authors you can find that if you go get their fiction books, then that sexual relationship between the two of them is mutual. We don't get a lot of that, and our kids don't get that. So somehow those are things we have to look at. And if you find that your kid is looking at stuff they shouldn't, you know, shame, blame, you're a horrible person is not going to help anything. An addiction to porn is like any other sin. It's not that it's displeasing to God. It's not that we're evil people. It is that it hurts who you are. It interferes with the person that God created you to be. Healthy and whole and beautiful and sexual. It interferes with that. And if you look at the 10 Commandments, that's really what that's about. This isn't about, I'm going to be really mad if you do that. It's about, I love you, I created you, and you know what? If you step outside these boundaries, it really is going to mess you up, and I don't want that to happen. And that is about love, folks. That is just about God's overwhelming, overpowerful, all-encompassing love. The other thing about porn, and then I'll kind of jump off of that for a little bit, is that it interferes with people's ability to have normal sexual relationships with other people. Our kids that are growing up with porn are going to have a really hard time being in a marriage relationship because what they've seen isn't real. What they've seen is whatever for the cameras. It isn't real. And men and women who become addicted to porn, and they say now that 50% of divorces have that as an element because it takes away the ability to have that real relationship because it's physiologically changing your brain. So there's some powerful stuff there. Okay, you can go back to the... Okay, this is, 66% of men. I don't know that this is accurate, how old this is. 16% of young women view porn online at least once a week. 88% include aggression. That's sex ed for our kids. Is that really what we want? Sex education in the church. It is time for us to acknowledge that sexuality exists and that it is a beautiful gift from God. Want to show you a couple of video clips that kind of give you a sense of how false what we see in the media is. So if you would run that Dove, this is the other one. Do the other one first. This is a time lapse of a makeover. This is the difference between the beauty I see on your face and what you're going to see on television and what they do to make it happen. Better turn that off, Brad, because Lord only knows what else is going to come up. I wanted to show you a clip about how women are objectified in advertising as sex objects. You know, have you noticed that if you're going to buy a car, that's about a woman in a bikini? Have you ever figured that out on TV when you're looking and watching? Or, yeah, whatever. I could not find one that I was going to bring into a sanctuary. It was just not going to happen. I watched 2 or 3 and said, nope, this is not going on a screen. But you know it's there, and I know it's there, and it's not okay. I don't know. It will be interesting to see if Hillary Clinton becomes president, if that is something that she will address. How women are treated as objects, and sexuality is treated as something certainly not sacred, certainly not much of a gift, and we know the results and impacts when things are not healthy, things are not okay. Part of it is that whole Augustine thing, that our bodies are bad. And Paul talked about things of the flesh and things of the spirit. And that kind of has been taken, I think, way out of as it was intended. Thinking about things of the flesh and things of the spirit, but recognizing that, you know, if you don't have a body, are you here? Not really. You know, it's part of who we are and needs to be integrated into how we see ourselves as healthy and whole individuals. It frustrates me that the church, you know, if I look over the last 15 years, 10 or 15 years, how many millions of dollars people have spent flying and getting together to talk, to make covenants and policies and have discussions about homosexuality. And I'm not saying that isn't an important issue, but we have done that at the expense of another 2 or 3 generations of children who are watching television and being inundated with unhealthy images and ideas about sexuality. It's a whole lot easier to talk about the other. it's a whole lot easier to not have to talk about women being seen as sex objects or men being seen as sex objects. We get more and more of that all the time. It's a whole lot easier to talk about homosexuality than it is to talk about our own healthy sexuality. But it's time. And again, you've started with that policy, and that's a beginning. That's a good place to start. I have one more video clip that I want to show you. And to me, this is probably one of the toughest pieces. And maybe that has to do with my own abuse, and maybe you weren't abused and it will be hard for you to see, and I would like to know that. That would be interesting. When Bob and I were talking about whether we were going to have children or not, one of the things, well, actually it may have been when I was pregnant already, one of the things that I read as I was reading about parenting was that, you know, things like kids tend to eat vegetables in relationship to how their dad eats vegetables. Did you know that? That's not encouraging, is it? But the most frightening thing I read was that kids' sense of self, their self-esteem and their self-concept will come not from how you treat them or how you talk to them or what you say to them, as much as it will come from your self-concept and how you feel about yourself. And Bob and I looked at each other and said, well, you know, there really ought to be years of therapy here probably before we become parents, because that's a struggle for both of us, is just feeling good about who we are. But we figured we could do this. We're educated, you know, intelligent adults. We could overcome. And you know what? You really don't. My kids are fine. They're good. Bob and I are fine. Could we be healthier or feel healthier about who we are and how we relate in the world, feel better about that? Yeah, probably. And our kids probably would. But I've seen over the years, I've heard them say things that I've said that I never, ever wanted them to say or think. And it wasn't because I didn't treat them like the amazing, wonderful, beautiful people they are. It has to do with how I feel about me. And this is about physical appearance, but I think this probably can relate to pretty much everything about who we are. So Brad, if you would play this yet.
I worry that she's inherited, oh gosh.
My number one hate on my body is my eyes are wonky, my finger arms.
I have very big legs.
I'm not keen on my legs, but I just try to focus on the fact that they're very strong and I'm a very good runner. I have a belief that the fact that I smile a lot has a lot to do with why my skin stays nice.
This is really hard to understand. They were just talking about how their legs were too big and
Phoenix is next.
Eyes, we don't like our eyes. Oh, she said her thighs too, didn't she? She said her legs. We both don't like our nose. I think don't like my arms, and she doesn't like her arms either.
So I've got hips and sort of bum areas, sort of upper thighs, and Lou's got her legs as well.
I have tried to make my girls feel good. Well, I did say to her, I don't like these things. Lose your charm. Have a look.
Bum.
Yeah, I do like my bum.
I like my face because it's smiley.
Legs, you wrote legs. Why do you like your legs? Really? Why do you like them?
Self-worth and beauty, it is an echo. It can echo from you to them, and then from them to others. Be happy. Just be happy.
How I feel about myself really affects how she feels about herself.
Why do you like your home?
Because it's the same as yours.
Okay, wish we could have turned the music down so you could have heard the voices. But basically, what Dove has worked on this natural beauty issue. Basically, the women talked about or wrote down things that they liked or didn't like about their bodies. They had the girls do the same thing, and they were almost identical. So they mimic and echo what they hear. And the other piece, I guess I just want to point out again, is I showed that makeover video clip where they did the makeover thing on the girl to the junior high kids when we were talking about becoming young women and young men of God. When you look in the mirror and it's never what you see on the mirror, then we've got to teach our kids that that's a lie. That's not true. That's not what people look like. We are all made beautiful in God's image. So keep saying that to yourself if you need to, but certainly to your kids, because that's fake. There is no fear in love. Perfect love casts away fear. That verse from John, I hope, encourages you to explore healthy sexuality for yourself and for your children. Sex education needs to come from the church. It must be countercultural to what our kids are hearing in the world. And I commend you for your work and attention to that. So, any questions? Not that I have answers, but I'll field questions anyway. Don't all talk at once. If not, be...
Thank you, Jenny. Hopefully everybody's gotten a little bit from it. Back in March 17th of 2015, our church adopted a Safe Sanctuary policy, and this was one of the things that was very important in from the conference, was that all of our churches develop a Safe Sanctuary policy, and we did one on March the 17th. And at that particular time, and I do have copies of it if somebody wants to see what that policy was, and this is to protect our children as well as protect ourselves here in the church. And we also asked anybody that was working with children and young people in our church that they sign a covenant. This is not something that you have to do every year. We had decided that if you signed it once, you were probably good, unless we find something out, then we might approach you. But we did ask that everybody that was working with children in our junior department, our nursery, our Bible school, that they would sign this covenant, and we keep it on file. So if anybody has not signed one and would like to sign one, I'm just going to leave them up here on the front pew. So if you want to pick up a copy of the policy again so you can see what the policy was, you can do that. And if we run out, I can make some more. So anyways, thank you again, Jenny.
I want to close in prayer, and then those will be up here. If you want to talk to me, you're more than welcome always to do that. And for donation, there are fruit cups and monster cookies downstairs. They'd make a great appetizer for the potluck that's coming after church. Okay, let's bow for prayer. Lord God, we thank you for this opportunity and this time to be together. We ask, Lord, that you would be with each of us to heal our wounds and to help us grow into health and wholeness in the light of your love. We ask, Lord, that you give us courage to face truth and to teach our children truth, and to know that in the midst of everything, always, you love us, you care for us, and you want our lives to be joyful and abundant. In Jesus' name, amen.